everyone, and welcome to the Creativators. I'm your host, Kathleen Johnson. This is where creativity meets activism, and we talk about social justice issues. We'll talk to everybody from painters, dancers, actors, and people really doing social justice work out there in the field, as well as academics and politicians. I hope you enjoy the many discussions we're going to have, and let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Kathleen Johnson, and I am the host of the Creativators podcast. And joining me today is Mischa Oak, LGBTQ dynamo, and has written a new book. And he's here to talk to us about who he is, what his journey has been, and his new release that's coming out very, very soon. Mischa, take it away.
Kathleen, I'm so happy to be here with you today. Thank you for having me. This is such a treat. And I just think you're such a bright light in the world. And it's so nice to be able to sit across a desk and reflect some of that light back to you today. So thank you for having me. What a joy. It's really a treat.
Thank you so much. Just for my listeners and for people that might not know, a little bit about where you're from, and just like those Coles notes of who Mischa is.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mischa Oak, and I'm an LGBTQ and Two-Spirit advocate and community organizer who has I've created a social enterprise to try and get my message out to the world that we're all ready to look at the queer community as a source of inspiration. And the way that I got here was through a really, an unusual life path of starting out I was a high school teacher and an elementary school teacher for a long time, and going through that system of just seeing how so many people are pushed to the side and left behind in learning, it really inspired me to want to change the system and disrupt the way that we're doing things. And, I see and I hear a lot of people, especially when I come out or tell them that I do, keynotes and training, inclusion training for folks, I get this kind of look in people's eyes of like pity or less than, or it kind of like a recoil, right? Like a lot of people just still carry a lot of homophobia and transphobia. Mm. And my mission here is to change how the world sees the queer people and the queer community. It's like we're ready to look at the queer community as a source of inspiration that we offer, like all diversity does. We offer all sorts of life lessons that can make every life better. And we all know that we're stronger together, right? But I want to give people the real understanding, this deep love that I have for the queer community. I love being part of the queer community. And I think everyone else deserves to love the queer community too, whether they're on the rainbow with me or not. And my journey on this path started when I was actually on a reality TV show 21 years ago.
Yes.
It was called
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was called My Fabulous Gay Wedding, and it was on Global TV here in Canada and Logo, which was MTV's new gay network in the States. So it was kind of this really exciting time where it felt like the whole world was becoming more queer friendly. Marriage equality laws were being passed around the world. Governments were starting to talk about gender equality. Like it just kind of felt like, the world is becoming a better place for queer people. And, I was having all these fun experiences. Like when I would go on to a plane, the gay flight attendants would recognize me from this TV show, and like usher me up to first class and treat me like royalty. Or, I was down in Times Square and signing autographs. Like I kind of had like a 15 minutes of fame situation happen. And that's right when I was starting my career as a teacher. So there I was glowing with this queer identity, thinking, the world is just becoming so safe, so welcoming. And then I saw the contrast to that. I saw, when we'd put up rainbows in our classrooms, I'd get all these horrible accusations like we were, calling us groomers, for example, or that we were recruiting, or just, people would say things like, I don't care what you do, but just leave it behind closed doors, right? And of course that hurt me, but what really bothered me was I saw how that was affecting the kiddos in my class or the families or my colleagues. And, my whole life I've been someone who really believes in shaping our communities. I want to be a part of, creating the future of our dreams. And so I became very motivated to try and sculpt my community and be a part of that and stand alongside people who are trying to do that. So that was over 20 years ago now. And gosh, it took me through a great career as a teacher, took me through a great career of becoming really a community advocate and activist and rabble rouser. I live in a small town on Vancouver Island, and, smaller communities aren't always the most welcoming and inclusive for diverse folks, wherever we are on the diverse spectrum. And so sometimes I need to get in there and have some tough conversations and be confident enough to take up some space and demand that we make space for others as well. So it's just been a really beautiful journey that way. And I feel really grateful that I get this opportunity to take up space but also try and inspire folks or be a part of folks thinking really good things about each other. We're in this together. And, maybe it's because I had this childhood where kind of an unusual childhood where I'd hop into my mom's hippie van and we'd drive down to Mexico for 4 months of a year. And we were basically living out at the end of a sandbar and in this little sweet, charming village. And that's not a childhood that a lot of people have. And when I was there, it really taught me that if I wanted to make something happen, I had to make it happen myself. I was on my own a lot in that community. Mm-hmm. And so if I wanted to eat or if I wanted to make friends or I wanted to learn Spanish or whatever it was, I had to go out there and just make it happen myself. And so I really carried that ethos with me all the way through.
I know, you're so shy.
That's one thing I've never been accused of, is being shy, And then, so I had that great childhood that was in Mexico. And then, in my teen years, I spent some time in Europe, and it was the same thing, just going out and meeting people and connecting and really falling in love with the world outside of the one that was used to. And then when I was in my early 20s, I went and did volunteer work in Ghana in West Africa. I spent 5 months there living in a really remote village. I was the only white person in the whole town, the only foreigner in the whole town. And although I was certainly there in a privileged context, as a foreigner coming in and doing volunteer work, but I still got a little glimpse of what it was like to, be the only, mm-hmm. and to how it feels sometimes to have to make connections and to make inroads when people create an impression of me before they meet me. And so that, combined with growing up queer and having that whole coming out experience, it really just taught me this love for getting to know one another and really trying to connect with people. And
well, we definitely connected
totally
that day in that coffee shop. I know you can't even remember how that or why that came about, but so, knowing you has been a journey for myself. And I think it's always wonderful to see somebody just climb and climb and climb. And it just seems like there's not really a ceiling for you and you just keep going. So, you've achieved that inspiration point that you were hoping to, because if I'm one wee person, you are an inspiration for myself. And you have written this book, and I know you did a TED Talk, and the theme of that talk, because I had the pleasure of seeing it in person, was all the gifts that people might be missing and that people in 2S LGBTQIA plus communities have to give, that I think we kind of take for granted, always been present, always will be present, and have always contributed. So how do you, with your book and, the message that you have is so huge, how do you sometimes break that down for people so that they can understand? Because as you mentioned, there is a lot of homophobia still, a lot of transphobia still, like a lot of misunderstanding. How do you break that down into bite-sized pieces for people? Or do you think that's your responsibility? Is it kind of like, here, just, learn on your own? Or you're a teacher. So do you find that teacher instinct kicks in and you're just like, okay, this is a teachable moment. And that is a part of why you exist, is to help people with that understanding. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that or what your approach is, because I know in social justice work in general, there's so many different philosophies about that. Some people will be like, it's not my job to teach other people. And then some of us, like, I think we're on the same page with that, feel like if we do have the greater knowledge and the greater understanding, why not share it?
I think my background as a teacher compels me to always be a teacher. And I always loved that work of trying to figure out what is the approach that's going to break through, and teaching is not about the teacher, actually. It's about the learner, right? And so what I loved about my teaching career before I left the walls of my classroom a few years ago to do this work was trying to figure out that piece. Like you said, like, how do I break it down? And like, what's that strategy, or what is that relationship? Let's not call it a strategy. Let's call it a relationship. What is that relationship that I need to foster so that someone gets it and can move forward? And for me, it comes down to 3 strategies, I think. Let's see. And first, I actually want to address that some people feel like it's a burden. I'm happy to take on the burden. I know for a lot of folks, it can feel like a lot to explain and constantly be explaining, but it fuels me. I get a lot of energy. Sure, I get exhausted by the end of the day doing it, but I really believe that's what I'm here to do. And so I really just jump at the opportunity to teach when I can. I take moments to refuel and build up, recharge my battery. But I love it, and I'm happy to take that burden off. Probably because it doesn't get under my skin like it does for a lot of other folks. Mm-hmm. And part of allyship is not standing in front of people, but standing beside people. And if I can take some of that pressure off of others who are tired of explaining or are tired of having to justify, then I'm happy to do that. So I feel like I'm being an ally for all of us or anyone who doesn't feel like they have it in them in that moment to share what they need to or want to. Okay, so my 3 strategies, all right? The first one is all around storytelling. The most effective way that we teach people, and there's a very valid reason why elementary school teachers teach through storybooks, is because that's how our brain learns, right? That's how our ancestors all taught each other, was through telling stories of where to gather food or what to avoid to stay alive and stay healthy. So our brains are primed for storytelling. And so for me, it becomes this exquisite challenge of what is the story that I can tell that's going to get someone on board. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm in a room in Kelowna where there's a lot of homophobia these days, and I've got a room of these guys sitting there with their arms crossed, staring me down, trying to show me that they don't want to be there. They might as well be wearing a MAGA hat or something, right? In my brain, I'm thinking, well, first of all, I'm not afraid of them. I used to be a high school teacher. They are no more intimidating than high school students. Okay, that was good training. Okay, if I could teach teenagers for 2 decades, I can teach someone who is maybe a little bit homophobic or transphobic, right? So I'm going right up to that person. I'm speaking to them with love, and I'm trying to figure out that story that's going to break through with them, right? So I love that. So good teaching to me is storytelling. The second piece is about relationship. And maybe what I mean by that is emotions, right? It's like, how do I want someone to feel? And, I'll tell them the story, but I need to tell them a story that's going to make them feel something. And the feeling needs to be the opposite of digging their heels in. It needs to be a story of an emotion of open-heartedness or being aware or being curious. So I'm always looking for that moment that someone uncrosses their arms and leans in and is a little bit more curious because I've just casually referenced something that I know that they've picked up on the internet or they've picked up from the trolls or some disinformation. I'm casually telling them this story that is going to activate that feeling for them without making them feel defensive. So then they let down their guard and they lean in. And then the continuation of that, I guess my third point is I get them to feel the exact feeling of the lesson. So, for example, I do something in all of my workshops where I get people to close their eyes. And you can do it if you'd like.
Sure.
And I'd like you to please think of a time in your life where you felt completely free to be yourself. And if you can't think of one, try to imagine a moment like that. And it's a moment where you weren't looking over your shoulders. You could just be yourself. You were at ease. Your body was relaxed and your soul was just shining bright. And I want you to really feel that moment in your body. Where were you? What could you hear? Thank you. So I do that with everybody.
Distinctly had a picture
Yeah?
in my distinct.
Do you want to share or is it private?
I can share it.
Okay.
I think what saddened me when I look at a lot of Gen Z, Gen Alpha is that isolation and being in front of a computer or on video games or whatever. I was always outside. And I was always discovering things, whether that's climbing up a tree or I don't think they have merry-go-rounds anymore because those were dangerous. A lot of adventure, just running around the neighborhood like a feral cat, just like my mom having to look for me when it started to get dark. And I think that is total freedom. That's what total, like when you asked about that, like I think that to me feels like freedom.
And everybody has a moment like that. And so when we can activate that in the person that we're trying to convince to be an ally or to be inclusive or kind, they relate to that lesson even before I get into the content. They relate to, I'm not explaining what 2S LGBTQIA plus means. I'm explaining that I've connected them to that feeling. And then all of a sudden they're open-hearted and then I can teach them the lesson. And it's so much easier. I could finish the workshop after that one moment. I mean, my workshop's a little bit longer, but it's like they get the lesson. And actually, that's an Indigenous pedagogy, right? That's an Indigenous way of teaching that I was taught by Tracy Finstad. And it's this, get someone to feel the lesson before you teach them the lesson, right? So storytelling, emotions, and then getting down to the specific emotion that that person can relate to and apply to whatever we're going through. And that's how I break it down for people to get them on board.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because people will often, I think I saw a stat somewhere that people forget information after like a workshop. Like, I think you forget 50% of it, like 24 hours later.
Oh, totally.
But you never forget how you feel.
That's it. Well, think back to the teachers that you had in elementary school. I don't remember the things they taught me, but I remember how they made me feel.
Yeah.
And all the wonderful people that we meet out there, the words come and go, but it's that feeling and it's that connection and it's that relationship that carries us forward. And, you know, we all have someone on the rainbow that we care about, you know, and if someone listening right now can't think of someone on the rainbow, when I say on the rainbow, I mean anyone who is part of the queer community. And by queer, I mean anyone who isn't exclusively straight or anyone who is gender diverse. Okay. And so we all have someone on the rainbow that we care about. And if we don't think we do, then that person just hasn't told us yet. Right. Okay. So we're trying to connect with that, really, is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. So you have written this wonderful book with a beautiful cover.
Talk about a sexy cover, right?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
What are the life lessons for everyone?
Okay. So this book, Rainbow Wisdom, 18 LGBTQ plus life lessons for everyone, really is my baby. It's my love story to the world about the queer community. It's a love letter to the world about the queer community. And it was this really beautiful experience of thinking, like, how do I break down queer history and queer culture in a way that is really relatable? And so I went through this process of, like, how do I break it down into the specific life lessons? And I don't think we can get into all 18 of them, but maybe the ones that I'll leave you with right now are around things like queer joy, right? And queer joy is a superpower or a secret weapon. Right? And the reason queer joy is so important to the queer community is everyone knows we've been targeted, we've been pushed to the side, we've been marginalized, we've had to find safety in underground spaces just so that we can connect and feel alive and feel vibrant, right? But there's a beautiful lesson in that, that queer nightlife, that joy is what helped us get through and helps us get through. Mm-hmm. And that's a life lesson that anyone can apply to their own lives, right? So, it's not that we're ignoring trauma. Mm-hmm. It's that we're using joy to get through that trauma. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's one life lesson that I talk about in here. And the story that I tell is all about how the Stonewall riots in New York in 1969, that's when people finally had enough of having their pictures published in newspapers and being arrested. Well, and they fought back. And when they fought back, it was fun. OK, they were doing kick lines, and the drag queens were hitting the police officers with their purses, and they were singing songs and cheering and joyful. They were angry, but we were joyful in that moment. And you want to see the power of queer joy? Put a bunch of straight guys into drag. Have you ever seen that? What happens when these guys, these bros, let's call them, they roll in. You say, why don't you try on a wig or try on a dress? Not that we're trying to make them queer, because you can't do that. You can't make someone queer. But it's just like this liberation from gender norms. And all of a sudden, this straight-laced guy, all buttoned up, has this new personality, is joking, is strutting around, is being flamboyant, is being liberated, right? That's a great example of queer joy.
Well, I know queer joy because I know you.
I try to sprinkle joy and sprinkle rainbows wherever I go. Okay, another life lesson is the queer community teaches us that we don't need to be fixed. Right? The queer community isn't broken, and neither are you. Mm-hmm. And we live in this culture right now where we're being sold all of these things all the time to fix us. We're fed all these things that others think we should think are wrong with us. But that's fake news. So none of us need to be fixed. Actually, we need to lean into those beautiful aspects of ourselves that make us different, that make us beautiful, because that's what makes our world so fun to live in. So it's life lessons like that, right? It's like, okay, let's look at the queer community. Let's see, okay, they're doing something right. We're doing lots of things right. And let's apply that to our own lives. And, I wrote this book because there are a lot of people who are really getting exhausted with these conversations. I'm noticing allies are becoming tired. This whole culture war thing, I don't like calling it a culture war, but everyone understands what I mean, is it's a very deliberate attempt to quiet us and to suppress allyship and confidence and diversity. And what I see all around the world is people are getting exhausted of the fight, and so they're stopping. They're hiding. And so I wanted to give people something that if you're tired of having that conversation with that relative or that person who's dragging their heels on inclusion, you can just give them rainbow wisdom, right? And so it takes some of the burden off of someone's shoulders. They say, here, read this. But I also wanted to give a book, this queer love letter to maybe newly out queer people. Like newly out, or maybe haven't been tapped into the queer community, and they deserve to feel just as great about the queer community as I do. Mm-hmm. I had some queer elders read this book, and they were some of the first readers of this book, like Libby Davies, who was the first out lesbian member of parliament in Canada. And she loved the book, and we've got a blurb from her in here. And even someone like that who's had this whole career of being queer and all this impact being queer, she got things out of this book that maybe she hadn't learned before. right? Or, you've got a family member who's newly out, and you're kind of tired of hearing all that garbage that's out there, all that troll hater cesspool of social media. This book will help you feel really good about the queer community, because we all deserve to be inspired by queer people. We all deserve to feel really good about the queer experience. So that's what this love letter is all about.
Well, I am so thrilled, and I am very happy because I'm lucky today. I'm getting a signed copy.
Yes, you are, of course.
So I can't wait to dive into it. And I really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today and talk to us, talk to my listeners. What's the one? I know you talked about life lessons and you talked about a lot of stuff. What's one nugget that you want to leave with us today?
You mentioned how my life just seems to be expanding and growing at this really exciting rate. And along the way, I've had so many people try and veer me off course.
Mm.
Basically, I've had people my whole life tell me to be less queer, or to not be as loud, or not to focus on queer identities as a way to differentiate myself from everything else that's happening out in the world. And I'm really glad I didn't listen to all that advice. There are plenty of people out there who want to clip our wings, or don't understand being boundless, limitless, because they feel constrained themselves. And so I guess that's what I'd like to leave you with, is that these opportunities in life are just going to keep coming. And the door is going to open up, right? We talk about these opportunities as doors, like walk through the door. I kind of see it like a subway car, right? The subway car comes, the doors open, you can get on or you cannot get on. And then that subway car is going to keep going. And you're going to have people telling you on the platform, don't get on that subway car for whatever reason, because it's so easy to rationalize why we can't do something or why we shouldn't do something. It's all fear-based thinking. But most of us aren't psychic. We don't know what's going to happen when we step on that subway car and step through that door and step into the uncertainty and joy of adventure. So I want to encourage everybody to be limitless, to shine bright, to follow that gateway emotion that you feel in your soul, that little glimmer of hope, that hint of the person that we can all become, and step through that door, leave the naysayers behind, and ride that subway train to wherever your beautiful life is going to take you.
Well, I feel I can conquer the world right now.
Yes, please.
That's the magic of Mischa Oak, everybody. And I'm glad you got to experience what he's all about and pick up the book Rainbow Wisdom. And in the show notes, we will have where to find him, the link for the book, which I believe is on pre-order right now. And thank you, Mischa, for coming in.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And if you liked that episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And feel free to pick up my book, Thinking Outside the Boardroom, Creative Solutions in Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism, available on Amazon and everywhere else books are sold.